Hey guys, in today's video, we meet Ezekiel Zeke Calloway, a mountain guide who faced death in the Rockies and returned with an urgent, divine message for November 22nd, 2024. What he witnessed on the other side is chilling and may change the future of humanity. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss anything. Get ready for this revealing journey. My name is Ezekiel Zeke Calloway, and as a mountain guide, I have always been fascinated by the extreme challenges that nature can offer. Climbing the Rockies wasn't just a job for me. It was a constant test of skill, endurance, and, perhaps, a way to escape the demons I carried. In March 1980, a particularly cold season took us to Aspen, Colorado, where my climbing partner, Michael Harrington, and I decided to take on a challenge few would dare: the north face of Maroon Bells. The plan was simple. We would set out at dawn, cross the treacherous terrain, and reach the summit before sunset. However, over the years, I've learned that the mountain has its own agenda, and on that day, it wasn't about to make our lives easy. The snow was thicker than expected, the ice was less firm, and the wind cut like blades. "Zeke, I think we should head back," Michael suggested, his voice muffled by the wind. I looked at him, my face hardened by cold and stubbornness. "If we give up now, we'll never know if we could make it," I replied, adjusting the climbing rope. I knew he was right, but something inside me pushed me to keep going. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the fact that, deep down, I would rather face the mountain than face my own feelings. As we climbed, I felt a pang of anxiety. It was unusual for me. Normally, climbing brought me an almost meditative mental clarity. However, that day, something felt off. Each step felt heavier, each breath more labored. My father's words echoed in my mind. "You always want to prove something, Zeke, but to whom?" As the afternoon progressed, conditions worsened. The sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains, turning the sky a bloody red as the temperature plummeted. At one point, Michael stopped and pointed to the horizon. "Zeke, the clock is turning. We have to decide now." I hesitated, feeling the weight of my decision. I chose to continue. We didn't know it, but that would be the day my life changed forever. When night finally fell, we were trapped against a wall of ice, hundreds of feet above the ground, and the only thing separating us from our deadly fall was a thin rope and a bad decision. The night was relentless. The cold chilled us to the bone, and every gust of wind threatened to blow us off the slope. Our only hope was to descend quickly before the temperature dropped any further. Michael and I began preparing to rappel, adjusting the rope against the icy rocks. The room was deathly silent except for the sound of our panting breaths and the metal of the carabiners creaking under the weight of the ice. "Zeke, is the rope safe?" Michael asked, his voice shaking, more from nervousness than from the cold. I tested the rope one last time and nodded. "It's ready. Let's go down quickly." Without hesitation, Michael went down first, moving with precision. As he disappeared into the darkness below, I felt a sudden wave of uneasiness and as if something was wrong. I adjusted my harness and began my descent. With every meter I descended, the ice cut my hands, even through my gloves. My breath formed dense clouds, and the wind seemed to mock me, whispering promises of disaster. That's when it happened. A crack echoed across the mountain, dry and terrible. I looked up and saw the rope tension abnormally. Something had come loose in the anchoring system, and the rope was stuck in a narrow crevice. "Michael!" I shouted, trying to warn him, but he had already reached the safe platform below and was out of sight. Panic took over. The rope began to fray under the pressure of the ice and my weight. I tried to stabilize my body, but my coordination was compromised by the extreme cold. "Keep calm," I muttered to myself, but the words were useless. The wind howled around me, and all I could think was, "Is this how it ends?" The rope gave way. I felt my body fall, the cold air cutting into my skin as I plummeted. There was no time to think, just the sound of my own scream, muffled by the vastness of the mountain. The impact was brutal. My body hit the snow and slid for meters before coming to rest against a rock. A sharp pain shot through my consciousness, but it was soon replaced by an icy emptiness. Lying in the snow, my body was numb, my vision darkened, and my breathing became a distant echo. I knew Michael couldn't reach me in time. The cold was no longer my enemy. It was a silent hug that pulled me into oblivion. And then, everything went dark. The darkness that enveloped me was not scary. Instead, there was a comforting stillness, as if all the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. I didn't feel cold, pain, or any familiar emotion. It was as if I were floating in an endless space, where time ceased to exist. Suddenly, a distant light appeared, faint at first but growing in intensity as I got closer. It wasn't just an ordinary light. It was alive, pulsating, and carried an indescribable energy. As I was drawn to her, I realized I was not being pushed or pulled, but rather guided by an invisible force that knew exactly where I should be. As I crossed the edge of what appeared to be a portal, I was overcome by a wave of peace so overwhelming that I cried. They weren't physical tears, but something deeper, as if my soul was being cleansed. The light around me took on fluid shapes, colors I had never seen before, vibrating with a harmony that was not of this world. It was then that I noticed the presence of something, or someone. An entity stood out from the light, glowing with an intensity that was almost impossible to look at directly. It didn't have a face in the conventional sense, but it emanated a sense of love so deep that I felt small and at the same time infinitely valuable. His voice, without sound, spoke directly to my consciousness. Ezekiel, you have come to the place where everything is revealed. Don't be afraid. I wanted to respond, but there were no words. Instead, my thoughts seemed to echo in the light, and the entity understood everything without me having to explain. The presence enveloped me in something that felt like a hug, not physical, but emotional, spiritual. It was like being entirely known and yet completely accepted. Meanwhile, I realized that the place I was in was not a physical space. It was an energy field, a realm where truth was absolute and where I, for the first time, understood my essence. There was no ego, just the awareness that I was part of something infinitely larger, a universal connection that united all things. You have not yet finished your journey, said the voice, softly. There are truths you need to know, and choices you need to make. The light around me began to change, revealing a new landscape, an even more vibrant and dynamic energy field. I felt like I was being prepared for something bigger. As soon as the light around me stabilized, I was overcome by an overwhelming sense of introspection. It felt like every moment of my existence was being recorded and would now be unveiled before me. The entity guiding me remained silent, but its presence conveyed a calm that seemed to say, "This is necessary." The space around me began to transform. Before me, a sort of screen appeared, or perhaps it was a window into my own consciousness. The first images were from my childhood. I saw myself as a 6-year-old boy, running around the yard while my sister, Iris, tried to catch up with a smile on her face. My heart sank when I saw her again. She looked so alive, so real. The scenes started to advance. Happy, sad, and banal moments of my life passed by like a river of memories. But it wasn't just like watching a movie. I felt everything again. Every emotion, every thought, every consequence of my actions. When the scenes came to moments where I had hurt other people, the pain they felt was also mine. It was as if I were inside them, experiencing their perspectives. One scene in particular hit me hard. I saw the night I last argued with Iris. I was 18, angry about something trivial, and she just wanted my attention. "Why do you always have to be so selfish, Zeke?" she said, with tears in her eyes. I ignored her and left the house, not knowing that, a few hours later, she would be run over while crossing the street to get something I had forgotten at the market. The pain was unbearable. The scene disappeared, but its essence remained within me. It was my fault, I thought. If I had stayed, she would be alive. "No," said the entity's voice, soft and comforting. "You carry the blame, but you don't have control over everything. Each life takes its course, and forgiveness begins with acceptance." I started to cry, not out of sadness, but out of relief. For the first time, I realized that the weight I had been carrying all these years was unnecessary. Iris appeared again, radiant, with a smile that illuminated my being. "I never blamed you, Zeke," she said. "Live the life you still have, but do it differently. Forgive yourself." When the review ended, I felt profound clarity. It was as if I had been freed from a burden that bound me to darkness. The entity spoke again. "Now that you understand the impact of your actions, you are ready for the next step." The light around me began to change again, and I knew something monumental was coming. The light surrounding me began to pulse, as if space itself were alive. Then, as if emerging from a translucent veil, Iris appeared before me. She wasn't exactly as I remembered her, but a brighter, more ethereal version, as if her essence had been purified and elevated. His presence enveloped me in an indescribable warmth, something no earthly memory could match. "Iris?" I asked, my voice echoing in my mind. It was a desperate call, an attempt to confirm that this was real. She smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in so many years, and took a step toward me. Her eyes were full of understanding, and I could feel that she knew exactly what I was thinking before I even said it. "Yes, Zeke, it's me," she replied, her voice not a sound, but a direct vibration in my consciousness, charged with tenderness and love. "I've never been away from you." The emotion took me completely. My knees felt weak, and if I had a physical body at that moment, I would have fallen. "I miss you so much," I murmured, invisible tears streaming down my soul. "And I'm sorry for everything, for that night, for not being a better brother." Iris moved even closer, extending her hands in a gesture that radiated pure forgiveness. "Zeke, you need to stop carrying this weight. My leaving wasn't your fault. It was my time, and there's nothing you could have done to change it. But the guilt you feel is holding you back. It's time to release." I wanted to protest, to argue, but before I could, she continued, "I never blamed you. What happened to me wasn't a punishment for you, nor proof that you failed. It was just life taking its course, but you're still stuck in it, and this pain has prevented you from living fully." His eyes glowed with intensity, and his next sentence was like a wave that swept through my entire being. "Forgive yourself, Zeke, and live. Live for both of us." I felt a lightness begin to fill my heart, as if what she said was capable of dissolving the chains that had held me back for years. Her energy was like a balm, healing my deepest wounds. She took one last step towards me, and her presence seemed to merge with the light around me. Before disappearing, she spoke one last time. "You have a mission, Zeke, and you are stronger than you know. I will always be with you." When his form dissipated, a deep silence took over. It wasn't emptiness, but a vibrant calm, as if the entire universe was waiting for me to absorb what had just happened. And in the midst of that moment of peace, a new strength began to emerge within me. The light around me changed again. I knew Iris had prepared me for something bigger. It wouldn't be the end of the journey. It was just the beginning. When Iris' presence dissipated, a silence took over the room. For a brief moment, I felt alone, as if her absence had left a void that was impossible to fill. But then, the light around me began to pulse again, more intense and vibrant than before. The air, or whatever that space was, seemed to carry a powerful electricity. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the light, radiant and imposing. It wasn't like Iris or the divine entity that had enveloped me before. It was something different. The figure appeared human, but its form was translucent and surrounded by a glow that wavered between gold and pure white. Wings, made of pure energy, extended from his back, creating an effect of majesty and authority. "I am the messenger," said the figure, with a voice that reverberated not only in my environment, but also within my soul. "You were brought here to understand the depth of divine love, but also to receive a warning, something that needs to be shared." My heart, or what was left of me in that state, sank. "A warning?" I asked, my voice carrying a mixture of fear and curiosity. The figure nodded and raised his hand. Immediately, a vision projected around me. It wasn't like the memories of my life that I had revisited before. It was something that transcended time. I saw cities being destroyed by earthquakes, the ground opening up and swallowing entire buildings. I saw explosions that turned the horizon into darkness and fire. Crowds ran in panic and screams of despair filled the air. At the center of it all, there was a dense shadow, a dark energy that seemed to feed on chaos. As I watched, the figure spoke again, his voice deep but still full of compassion. "On November 22, 2024, the Earth will go through a great ordeal. Natural disasters and human conflicts will reach global proportions. This will be a testing time, an invitation for humanity to rise again or succumb to darkness." I trembled, even without a physical body. "What can I do? I'm just a man. How can I stop this?" The angel looked straight at me, his eyes shining like stars. "It's not about stopping. These events are part of a larger cycle. but their impact can be mitigated. You were chosen to warn others, to call humanity to pray, to love, and to reconnect with the divine. Only then can the light prevail. More visions appeared, people kneeling in prayer, connected by a luminous energy emanating from their hearts. The shadow retreated before the light they generated. The angel continued, "You must spread this message. Teach that salvation lies in love and compassion. Humanity needs to remember who it really is." For a moment, I thought about refusing. It was an overwhelming responsibility. But then, the image of Iris came back to me, her smile full of confidence, and I knew I couldn't escape this mission. Before disappearing, the angel left one last message. "Remember, Zeke, even in the greatest darkness, the light never stops shining. You will be the bridge between the two." The figure disappeared in a flash of light, and I remained there, filled with a mixture of fear and determination, knowing that my life would never be the same. After the angel disappeared, the environment around me transformed once again. The light, which had previously been bright and warm, became more ethereal and translucent, as if I were being transported to an even higher plane. I felt like I was moving, but not physically. It was my consciousness traveling through a vast ocean of energy. Every step I took, or rather, every advance, seemed to take me closer to the essence of the universe. Suddenly, the space around me expanded, revealing a sight that took the breath away from my soul. It was as if I was looking at Earth from a perspective that no satellite or telescope could offer. Earth was not just a planet, it was a living being, pulsing with golden light. Each human heart glowed like a tiny flame, connected to all others by invisible threads of energy. The view was majestic, but it was not without flaws. A dense, dark fog covered many of these lights, obscuring their true essence. This fog, I heard the voice of the entity that had accompanied me earlier, is the separation that humans have created between themselves. It is the illusion that they are alone, that they are not part of a greater whole, but within each one, the light still shines. I felt a deep sadness when I realized that many of the lights were almost turned off, as if people were losing their connection to something bigger. However, I also saw other lights shine brightly, spreading flashes that dispelled the surrounding darkness. It was then that I understood. Love and compassion had the power to break through the fog. The vision began to expand. I saw not just Earth, but countless other planets, star systems, and galaxies. Everything was connected by a luminous network, which pulsed as if it were the heart of the universe itself. Every atom, every particle, seemed to vibrate in harmony with a melody that I could feel, but not hear. "You are part of this," said the entity, its voice filling the entire space. "Everyone does. Every choice, every act of love or fear reverberates through this network. This is how creation expands and evolves." Then the view changed again. I saw humanity in a possible future. In one timeline, the lights of connection grew stronger, and people lived in harmony, guided by the understanding that they were all interconnected. In another timeline, the fog had completely spread, and darkness had taken over. The contrast was overwhelming. "The future is not written," said the entity. "You have seen what can be, but the choice is up to each being. Humanity has the power to shape its destiny, but it needs to awaken to it." I felt an urgency in my soul. I now understood the responsibility I carried. The message I received was not just a warning, but an opportunity. If I could help people see what I had seen, maybe there was still hope. As the vision began to fade, I felt a last wave of energy wash over me. It was as if the universe itself was whispering to me, "You are the light. Lead the way." As the vision began to fade, I was overcome by a sense of loss and longing. It was as if I was leaving behind a place that, paradoxically, I knew was my true home. The vibrant colors and harmony of that spiritual realm began to dissipate, replaced by a dense, almost oppressive darkness. It wasn't the haunting emptiness of the beginning of my experience, but a feeling that something was pulling me back into a denser, more physical state. The voice of the divine entity echoed softly in my mind one last time. "You have made your choice, Ezekiel. Returning means responsibility. You have been touched by the light, but now you must carry it for those who still walk in darkness." I wanted to ask what that meant, wanted clearer answers, but I felt my consciousness being pulled into a dizzying motion. The sensation was like passing through increasingly heavy layers of energy, as if I were diving deep into water after having floated on the surface of an ocean of light. The pain was the first thing that came back. An icy shock ran through my body, and it was only then that I realized I was still lying in the snow at the foot of the mountain. My breath came in ragged gasps, and my chest felt like it was burning with every attempt to inhale the cold air. My limbs felt stiff, as if they were no longer part of me, and the cold that had once seemed distant was now overwhelming. I heard a distant sound, voices, a muffled scream. Little by little, Michael's voice became clear, desperate, calling my name. "Zeke, Zeke, can you hear me? Stay with me, man." I tried to open my eyes, but everything seemed like a blur. Despite the pain and confusion, something inside me knew I had come back for a reason. My mind was still filled with the visions I had witnessed, the light, the love, the angel's warning. Even in that fragile condition, I felt a new strength within me. Michael appeared at my side, visibly relieved to see that I was still alive. He was talking, but I could barely hear. My body, as damaged as it was still there, and I knew I needed to keep fighting. Shortly after, the sound of helicopters cut through the air. Rescue had arrived. I felt a mixture of gratitude and grief. Gratitude for being alive. Grief for knowing that I could never express with words everything I had experienced. When they placed me on the stretcher and began to take me off the mountain, I thought about the entity's last words. "You must live as a channel of divine love." As the sky opened above me, with the first rays of sun touching the snow, I knew my mission was just beginning. The days following my rescue were a blur of doctors, exams, and endless periods of rest. My body was severely frozen, with injuries that could have been fatal if help had taken longer. Each limb felt heavy, as if it still carried the rigidity of ice. Despite everything, something deeper had changed within me. It wasn't just my body that was healing. My soul was also being reborn. As I lay in the hospital, my mind endlessly revisited what I had experienced. The spiritual realm, the angel, the words of Iris, and the revelations about universal connection. It was as if my perspective on life had been reconfigured. Things that had once seemed important to me, status, achievements, even my past failures, now seemed insignificant in the face of the magnitude of love and light I had experienced. Michael came to visit me on the second day after the rescue. He entered the room with a tentative smile, clearly relieved to see me awake. "Man, you gave us quite a scare," he said, sitting down next to the bed. "I thought I lost you on that mountain." I tried to smile, but my words came out with difficulty. "I thought so too." There was so much I wanted to tell him, but how do you explain something so vast and indescribable? So I opted for a simple question. "Do you believe in something bigger, Michael? Something beyond all this?" He looked at me, confused but with genuine curiosity. I don't know, Zeke. I guess I never gave it much thought." "Why?" I took a deep breath, feeling the need to share, even if hesitantly. "I saw things, Michael. When I fell, it wasn't just darkness. I went to a place. I saw something that changed everything about me. And I came back because I feel like I have something to do here." He was silent for a moment, clearly trying to process what I had said. Finally, he nodded. "Maybe you came back for a reason then. Just know that I'm glad you're here." Over time, I began to realize that I couldn't keep this to myself. However, sharing my experience would not be easy. The world I lived in was practical, and stories like mine seemed like something out of fiction books or films. Even so, I felt a growing urgency to speak, as if the light that had touched me needed to spread to others. While I was still in the hospital, I asked for paper and a pen. I began writing about my experience, trying to put into words the love, forgiveness, and vision of unity I had received. I didn't know if anyone would believe it, but I knew I had to try. The most surprising thing was that as I wrote, I felt my heart calm down. The guilt I had carried for so long seemed to dissolve, replaced by a calm determination. Iris was right. I couldn't change the past, but I could live the present differently, and that's exactly what I planned to do. When I left the hospital weeks later, I was not the same man who entered. Something in me had awakened, something that could not be ignored. I had a mission, even if I didn't yet know exactly how to accomplish it. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.